Well, hello everybody. I'm just sitting informally here in my living room. As I said to some of you, and I certainly posted on Facebook, that I'm going to just give a little talk about something in my experiences, because at the moment, the Steinway that I practice on downstairs needs tuning and some other adjustments, and that's going to happen on Friday. So I'm not playing anything on it until that's done. Um, so it'll probably be next week before I play the next thing for it. But already on my channel, I do have a couple of talks from before. So even though the majority of things on it are my performances, there are some talks as well from that I did before. So yeah, I just thought I'd say just a couple of things about a couple of my experiences in during my concert travels. Um, Before I start though, um, you might see, I've been wearing this particular sweater for a number of my performances, and maybe some of you are wondering what this word Aotearoa is. Well, it's the name of the country of New Zealand in the Maori language. The Maoris are the main indigenous group there, and the Maori language is official in New Zealand. So what Aotearoa means, and you have to pronounce every vowel, and that and other Polynesian languages, means land of the long white cloud. And truly, you see that kind of cloud there, streaming from the mountains, just kind of horizontally. So, anyways, I just want you to know what that is, because I know you've seen this with some of my performances. It's just a nice, comfortable shirt. Well, I wanted to say about an experience that I had. It was getting to be about 20 years ago now, maybe just a little bit less, when I was stranded after a concert tour. And it's, of course, timely to say something about that because of what's going on in the Middle East right now. And we've seen this in the news. There are many Americans and others that have been and still are stranded and are trying to get out of there. Well, I was stranded once also, but it was after a concert tour, and it was in Thailand. Thailand's a very nice country. I've been there a number of times. I had a number of tours over there. Had a chance to travel fairly extensively around the country. Lovely people. The concerts were arranged through the binational center there. Now, let me just define what that is. What is a binational center? It's really an educational institution, but it also has a cultural component. That means it has an association, in that country itself, and some connections with us, with Americans, with the American Embassy, and so on. So there are many of these in Latin America, and I have given concerts in a number of countries through binational centers there. For instance, in Venezuela, in Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, Chile, just to mention, a couple. But that's what a binational center is, So they do sometimes organize musical events, but basically, it's a language teaching institution. They teach English there, but you can also take classes to learn the language of that country too. It's like in reverse. Well, anyways, the binational center in Bangkok. They were the ones who organized my concerts most of the time when I was there. This was about 20 years ago when I finished a tour. It was in November. It was getting close to Thanksgiving, and political unrest began. Not violent or anything. There were the monarchists and the opposition, and the press referred to them as the red shirts and the yellow shirts. Well, the yellow shirts, they shut down the two Bangkok airports. And this was just at the end of the tour. It was just a time when I was ready to go home. There was no violence in the city. Bangkok itself was normal. Life went on just completely as normal. But the airports were shut down. So any one of us who wanted to leave couldn't do that. We were all stuck there for however long it might take until those airports would reopen. So, well, knowing Bangkok already and knowing it's a nice city, very crowded, yes. Uh, and so I just walked around. I took there's an elevated train there that has, I think, three different lines to it. So I just kind of rode it end to end, walked around. There's a large park that's very close to that hotel that I was staying. It's called the Hotel Saladang, and Lumpini named the park. And I remember that. It's Lumpini. That park was kind of halfway between my hotel and that binational center that had organized my tour. So I just walked around a little bit. I could say killed time, but I was having a nice time and just seeing day by day what's going to happen. Regarding when I could leave. The cost of living, the prices of things are very, very inexpensive, and I took the opportunity also to take a couple of train rides, maybe like about an hour outside of Bangkok, to see a couple of places I hadn't seen before. Okay, it looked like every Caucasian face that you saw in Bangkok was probably a stranded tourist or a stranded person that was not able to leave. Well, I had flown on that particular tour on Northwest Airlines. Now, Northwest Airlines doesn't exist now. They merged with Continental, and Continental doesn't exist now because they merged with United. So the logo you see on the United planes that has that stylized globe on the tail, that comes from Continental. That's when they merged. Well, anyways, Northwest Airlines was, of course, functional then. So I went to their office to find out is there anything they could tell me. And I was told, well, come back in about 6 days and we'll be able to tell you. So I kind of shrugged my shoulder. Okay, 6 days, I'll check it out. So I continued doing what I was doing, walking around, riding that train, and just basically, sort of enjoying the time that I was there. Well, 6 days passed, and I came there and asked, what's new? You have any updates? And they said, well, come back in about 12 days and we'll tell you. I shrugged my shoulder again and off I went again, doing my thing there. By that time already, the tourist office, the National Tourist Office, already sorting out accommodations for the various other people who were stranded there. I still was pretty much at that same Saladang hotel. Well, so like I say, time passed, and I didn't know what was going to happen any more than that. I was just waiting like everybody else. What's what? Now this was already coming to the, into end of November, early December. Now I was still teaching here at my university here at Youngstown State, Dana School of Music, and I had music appreciation classes, and this was coming close to exam time. So my lovely wife, Suzanne, took over for me. She already had her own music appreciation classes, and she administered the exams for me. Obviously, I couldn't be there, until I was able to fly out. So she did that, and so time went on and on, but finally, it looked like this could have gone on into Christmas or almost close to Christmas. Well, finally, though, after that period of time, I was able to finally fly out. So I spent 18 days in Thailand after my tour was over, and I tell you, I enjoyed every bit of my extended vacation there. We have nice tropical weather, and I enjoy hot tropical weather. And like I say, the cost of things was cheap, and I had a chance, like I say, to travel around within about an hour or so of Bangkok to see a couple of other places. A lot of worse places in the world to be stuck, I suppose. But with what was going on there, with the climate, the lovely people, the weather, it was just very, very enjoyable for me. Yeah, so I say Thailand is such a nice country, and I'll tell you where I've played over these tours of towns. I mean, you'd have to look at a map to locate them. Towns like Chiang Mai, Khon Kaen, Chonburi, Korat, Songkhla, Hat Yai. These are in addition, of course, to Bangkok. And I once traveled by bus all the way from Chiang Mai down to Bangkok, which is a pretty long trip. And I remember staying in a town called Utardit along the way. When I got off the bus, I hadn't reserved anything. I was just looking for a hotel. But I remember, just seeing I was the only non-Thai there. I was the only white face, in that town, which is neither here nor there. It just is, when you travel around. And I went at that earlier time, but also while I was stuck in Bangkok. One of those train trips I took was to Kanchanaburi. And Kanchanaburi has that famous bridge on the River Kwai. It was a famous movie, several decades ago. And the bridge is still there. It was partially, damaged during the war. It's been reconstructed. You can walk on it. And there are like indentations that go out from the platform because trains still use it. So you'll be out of the way, if a train comes. There's like an area you can stand. I remember the first time though, they just had wooden ties on it, so that you really had to step very carefully because you could see the river just below it, and so you had to do. But now they have a metal plate over that, so you can walk over that. So Kanchanaburi, I did most certainly go to see again. That was at least the third time or so that I'd been there. So that was an experience that I had, in Thailand. Being stuck there, this can happen with anyone, and it just happened, at that time. But like I said, I enjoyed every bit of my extended vacation. A kind of a similar but much shorter situation had to do with it happened in Britain. Actually, that was on another occasion totally, when it was right at the early stages when discount airlines were just beginning. They had originally there were like charter flights where it was a cheaper ticket, but you also had to have accommodation or something. And then they started to call them ABC flights. Just remember what what it actually meant, the acronym, but where you could do just a flight. And there were a couple of airlines that started to do that. So I had a trip. I went over to Britain. I think I think I had a P&O cruise to do, and I believe I went to India also, for some concerts. I flew on an airline called National Airlines to Stansted Airport, which is sort of the third airport of London. You have Heathrow and Gatwick, which are the main ones. Stansted. It's very near Cambridge, where the famous university is. So I flew on National. And actually, there was on that same flight, there was a person, a young lady that known right here from the Youngstown area, just happened to be on that same flight with her husband, which was coincidentally, you never know, we might run across. I just remember that on that flight. Well, anyways, after I did my things, cruise in India, I came back to Stansted Airport for my flight back, and guess what? The airline had gone bankrupt. It was out of business. How to get home now? Okay. Well, I went to Heathrow Airport and see what I could do about getting some flight back. I saw people at the Pan Am counter, TWA, British Airways, the main called Legacy Airlines. But I also saw Air India, and I knew they flew to New York, and I saw Kuwait Airways. And they had a flight from York, and I could see that people that were those other counters probably didn't know that, because there was quite a bunch of people there, but at Kuwait Airways, nobody. That's where I went. I got myself a ticket, and I still remember it's called Flight 101, and I got back to New York that way, But I mean, the airline that I was originally on, that charter airline, that special airline, National, had gone bankrupt, at the time I had to go. So, stuff like that can happen. So it was like an almost stranded situation, but not like in Thailand. Now talking again a little about the Middle East and that area that's in the news right now. And I've played in a number of countries there, and almost all of them were through U.S. embassies. So that was two interesting experiences. And when I say Middle East, I'm also including like North Africa as well. played in Algeria, for instance, and had two concerts there. Algiers, the capital, and Constantine, the second city. And in Constantine, I remember that the embassy wanted me to play something for kids in a local cancer hospital. So, okay, so I and somebody from the embassy went with me. And I could already see as we entered the place that there were kids gathered, their nurses, their parents, for this. And I was, of course, curious what kind of piano they had for me there. So, we went in there, I took to the right, and I said, oh, cripey. It's a keyboard. That's not a piano. That's not a piano. Now, an electronic piano is okay. When it has all 88 keys and weighted keys and you have a pedal, that's fine. I can play on those. I have played on those, and I have no problem, doing that sort of thing. But a keyboard, it has less keys. I don't know what that's 65 or something. That's what rock bands. You see that in rock bands. It's not a piano. It has a different feel altogether. It doesn't have a pedal either. Well, they thought that as long as it has keys, it's a piano. Sorry, it wasn't. Well, I had to think real quickly because I said first, my gosh, I don't know what I can do with this thing, I thought real quickly, and you started to play that famous Beethoven bagatelle, Furilis, everyone knows, because I had to stand, I was able to fit that in that limited keyboard, area, so, they loved it and so on, but they didn't realize, they thought, well, it's just keys, it must be a piano of some kind. There's only one other time when I actually played on that. That was at a school on Saipan, Pacific, where I go regularly and play in the schools there. And it was in the high school there, one of the main high schools there. I was supposed to play on a regular electronic piano there for the students. But there was an electrical problem, the kind of thing you played one note, the next note sounds with it. It was unusable. So there was only this keyboard that was there. Well, having done it in Algeria, I thought to myself, well, I can do a couple of things on it, but I had to explain to the students that this is not a piano. This clattering sound is a totally different sound, and and so they knew that this wasn't what I normally play. But I managed, and somehow that got it. Okay, I'll talk about Algeria. I did at least 3 tours in Tunisia, also an interesting country. Well, in Tunis, the capital. But one interesting experience I had was outside of Tunis, but very close outside. And I remember one of the concert was the former French cathedral of Saint Louis, back when Tunisia was a French colony. It was decommissioned and became and is a museum. Well, that's what the concert was. But just down the hill from that cathedral are the ruins of the famous ancient city of Carthage. That's where it is. It's just behind Tunis. So I had a chance to wander among the ruins of Carthage at that time, which I found quite interesting. I played it in Saudi Arabia. This was in 1992. Now, this was still way back when things were very strict there. Things have loosened up quite a bit now. There's now tourism, which wasn't happening at that time at all. In those days, it was, all the women had to wear, the full veil and the abaya, the black cloak. Women were not allowed to drive and all that. That's loosened up now quite a bit since then. It was 1992. And 2 recitals I had were in Riyadh, the capital, and Dhahran, which is on one of the coasts. I found Riyadh a kind of a confusing city in the sense that where's downtown? You had I had a cluster of buildings, then you had sort of a semi-desert, a space, then another clump of buildings, scattered here and there, but you didn't get a sense of where's the center of it. I remember that as an impression. No, Dhahran was different. Dhahran does have it's a town which has a standard look to it, really. The concerts there were at that time, remember, when everything was very strict still. It was at the ambassador's residence in Riyadh, and it was at the consulate in Dhahran, because that's our property. That's U.S. government property, all right? So there were no concerts that were out there anywhere in Saudi Arabia. This has changed now. Remember, again, I'm talking about 1992. Uh, Saudi guests could come, to whatever functions were on, and that included women. They came, and they were like everybody else, inside our facilities there, Western dress. They had drinks. It was often so on. But when they left, they had to put on the abaya and the black cloak and the veil and everything like that. I remember that was at a time when some of these women were agitating to be allowed to drive. And I wondered, I remember there was one woman there who was an activist and had actually been arrested for that. And she was one of the guests, who came there. So that was interesting, when I was there in Saudi Arabia. Played in Oman, which is just, to the southeast of that. It's an interesting country in itself. More liberal at that time, than Saudi Arabia was. I had 3 concerts, I remember there. One was at the ambassador's residence. One was at the British American School. And the third was an interesting thing. It was actually for the Omani police. It was in their academy. I remember sitting there, there was a couple of hundred policemen, all in uniform, and they were all listening to a classical concert, and I found that to be kind of an interesting experience.
Palestine.
Played in Bahrain. That was the one that was not through the embassy. This was in 1984, I think it was. Played at the Hilton Hotel there. 2 recitals. It was organized by the Hilton Hotel. So that was my one time in Bahrain. 2 different programs. It was around the same time that I'd also played at the Hilton in Turkey, in Istanbul. The one time I was actually in the city of Istanbul, which I had a chance to see some of the Blue Mosque, the palace, and the bridge that connects literally Europe and Asia over there. And from Istanbul, I took a bus trip to the town of Çanakkale. I remember it was about a 5 or 6 hour ride there. Boy, was that bus reeking with smoke, It was all the passengers seemed like every single woman was a heavy smoker, as I remember on that trip. But why did I go to Çanakkale? Because that's at the end of that peninsula where the ruins of Troy are, as in Helen of Troy. So I had a chance to see the ruins of Troy. And I remember being there sort of towards, it was kind of in the latter part of the afternoon. No one else was there, so I was wandering around the ruins and so on. And, there's several layers of Troy, archaeologically. I think it's Troy 5, number 5. I think that's the one that's supposed to be from Homer's time. I mean, when he wrote about, the Odyssey, the Iliad, and through that time. But I remember that's quite interesting. But when I was leaving, I saw at the entrance, oh dear, this kind of tourist schlock, that I avoid like the plague. There was a big structure there, wooden horse souvenirs. Oh my God, leave me out of that sort of stuff. I head the other way. I have nothing to do with that. But right there in Troy, the famous ruins of Troy, So, and I was in Jordan also when I was still talking about the Middle East. In Jordan, 2 recitals. I'm on an Erbil. I saw a couple of the Palestinian settlements, the refugees that are there. And also in the Palestinian areas of the West Bank. The one time that I was in Israel, but my concerts were in the Palestinian area of the West Bank. I think I had 2 or 3 performances. And again, in Palestinian refugee camp, they had music school there, I remember. So they had organized things, fairly well. But yes, I saw some of the settlements and all the barriers and the checkpoints and everything that you read in the paper. Hard scrabble country, it's been fought over for centuries. And yet, you look at it, it's not a terribly fertile type of land, rocks and semi-desert and that sort of thing. But here we are, that's how the thing is. So I've expanded a little bit on what I was basing it on my time stranded in Thailand, but that's okay. It's a kind of a stream of consciousness talking. So I think that I've rambled on enough and everything. I do want to say that I'm very glad that the number of subscribers to the channel continues to increase. A week ago, it was like 739 Now we're almost at 800. I just checked. It's 798. You know, I'm in pins and needles to get that to 800 at least. I hope that that's going to happen. So, kind of to wind up today's talking, I'm going to tell you a cute musical limerick. Okay? I like that. You know. How to begin? Yeah, let me think about the one I want to say. My girlfriend wants me to ski, said the flabby young pianist, but gee, with Mussorgsky, Stravinsky, Tchaikovsky, that's quite enough skiing for me. Okay, have a good day. What do you think? How many minutes did I go?